Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, Scooby Doo. What do these all have in common? Well, they've all been rebooted at least twice. Reboots happen all the time. It could be that the story being told has come to an end, it could be that the most recent version didn't perform well, or it could be that a better opportunity came along. But the question is, how can a reboot distinguish itself from the original version without losing what made the franchise special in the first place? Now, you may be thinking, hey, you already made this video, see? Look, it was the first video you made. To which I have prepared the following response. No. On the surface, reboots and remakes may seem very similar. Both are starting from scratch with characters we already know, but the key difference between them is that remakes directly regurgitate the story of its original counterpart, whereas reboots use these pre-existing characters and settings to tell a new story. The different Fantastic Fours, all the different Batmen, these are all examples of reboots, because while they use the same characters to tell different stories, they have no through line between them. Robert Pattinson's Batman hasn't done any of the things that Ben Affleck's has done. He hasn't fought Superman or formed the Justice League. He is a completely individual version of the character, and that's the difference. Old characters, new story. Perhaps the most famous example of a rebooted franchise is Spider-Man. There have been 3 major live-action depictions of the character. One played by Tobey Maguire from 2002 to 2007, one by Andrew Garfield from 2012 to 2014, and one by Tom Holland, which began in 2017. They've all lost their Uncle Ben, fought some of the same villains, and they've all been given the iconic message.
With great power comes great responsibility.
But other than that, they've not really had much in common, which is good. If they all did the same stuff, then that's a remake. And I think I've made my thoughts on those quite clear by now. All 3 feel different, all 3 portrayals are unique. But I think the easiest way to sum it up is that Tobey was the best Peter Parker, nerdy, awkward, but his Spider-Man didn't quip as much as the others. Andrew was the best at Spider-Man, quippy, agile, but he was too cool as Peter. And Tom is the best of both worlds. And the tones of all 3 differ greatly as well. Tobey's, for the most part, was much lighter in tone, rather more whimsical, as demonstrated by his organic webs and hooked fingers, as opposed to the comic-accurate web shooters and gravity manipulations the other 2 have. Andrew's, on the other hand, is much darker, and it has a whole overlying mystery about what happened to his parents. Tom's is lighter again, but he now exists in a whole world of superheroes. Spider-Man also had the unique opportunity to unite these 3 portrayals on screen, and I'm so glad they took it, as a love letter to Spider-Man fans. And who knows, Tobey and Andrew could pop up again in Beyond the Spider-Verse, or in an upcoming Avengers film. I mean, they've already got the Fox X-Men. Another poignant example, though one that isn't discussed as frequently, is Scooby Doo. There have been 13 reboots of this franchise for TV, and a further 4 for the big screen, for a total of 17 reboots, and that's not including the original show. Now, I'm not going to cover all of these, because I'd be here all day, and quite frankly, I haven't even seen them all. But maybe that's something I'll do in future. But what I am going to do is first identify the spirit of Scooby Doo. Scooby Doo follows a group of teens foiling low-level schemes with a talking dog, so of course it can't be too dark. It just wouldn't work. It also can't be too big in scale. They're teenagers. They're not going to be much help preventing global destruction. So now that I've established some rules, let's have a look at some Scooby Doo, shall we? I want to first look at Scoob. Released in 2020, Scoob follows Scooby and the gang as they attempt to prevent global destruction. Oh, wait. Scoob teams the gang up with the Blue Falcon, another Hanna-Barbera character, and I have no issue with this. They've teamed Scooby with loads of people in the past, and this isn't even the first time they've teamed him up with the Blue Falcon. My issue comes in the fact that when the Blue Falcon is introduced, he and his crime-fighting team effectively become the focus of the film, and it becomes a high-stakes superhero film. The first 20 minutes of this film are the best bit, because it's effectively the setup for a longer episode of Scooby Doo, and that's exactly what I'd want from a Scooby Doo film. But once the Blue Falcon arrives, it loses all of its Scooby Doo charm. Really, I think it just comes down to whose film it is. It's called Scoob, so we're expecting Scooby Doo with a side of superheroes, and not the other way round. This concept is portrayed much better in the Scooby Doo movies from the 1970s, in which they were paired with a different cartoon character for each episode, including Batman a couple of times. I think these work so much better because they roll Batman into the Scooby Doo genre rather than the other way round. We expect Scooby Doo with a side of Batman, and that's exactly what we get. Now, if their names were switched in the title, you'd expect Batman with a side of Scooby Doo, which is effectively what Scoob gave us. All of this is to say that a reboot needs to retain the core of its original counterpart. You need to keep the thing that made people like the original, otherwise people won't like it. That's not to say that it should be exactly the same, of course not. What's the point in rebooting something if you're just going to make a carbon copy of the original? You might as well just continue the original. And I think sticking with Scooby Doo Mystery Incorporated is a great example of this. It keeps the amateur detectives, the phony supernatural villains, which are so integral to the Scooby Doo brand, but gave the whole thing a darker, more serialized plot. It still has that Monster of the Week formula, but sprinkles in some overarching mysteries, like Mr. E, great pun name by the way, and the planispheric disc. It keeps all of the Scooby Doo charm, but gives it a definite through line and a darker tone, without being too dark or complex for its teenage target audience. And that is exactly what a reboot should do. Keep the essential stuff, switch up the rest. Because if it's exactly the same, then there's no point marketing it as its own thing. You should just tack it on to the end of the last one. But sometimes it's nice to refresh the brand, give it a new feel, and really, that's what a reboot should be for. But what do you think? What do you think reboots should look like? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, why don't you like and subscribe? Because who knows, I might reboot this series in a few years.